Hello, and welcome to Tanner Does Tech. Today we're going to be continuing off the last video where I did a quick down and dirty tour of my home lab, at least in the physical servers and server rack sense. And today we're going to go into my Proxmox environment. So starting right off here, we're going to go to the node that I run. This is the HP that was in the last video. As a quick recap, it's the Xeon W2123, which is just a 4-core processor that clocks in at 3.6 gigahertz. For the RAM, it's DDR4 ECC, 128 gigabytes of that. As you can see here, I'm only using about 18. And then the disk space here, I'll talk about that in a second, but it's not 100. It's a 256 drive for Proxmox, and it's a 1 terabyte drive for the other stuff. For anyone that hasn't seen Proxmox before, Proxmox does come with some of these dashes that you see here, and this is nothing that you have to configure, it's just built into the system. The quick thing that I did want to highlight on is, as you can see up here, it's Proxmox.TannerDoesTech, which is running through my Nginx reverse proxy, which I'll go over in a little bit here. But you'll see that if you load the shell when you're using it through this method, that it doesn't load. I haven't figured out the troubleshooting steps for this yet, but it seems that when you go to a URL through the Nginx portal, it doesn't know how to translate back the shell. Now we're actually going to jump up here to Data Center, and in Data Center, we're going to drop on down here to Resource Mapping. And in here, just kind of wanted to show real quick. So Proxmox makes it pretty easy to do resource mapping, and I talked about the AMD card in the last video, and you can see right here, we can just pick the AMD card, name it, and hit create. And just like that, it's now created. And when you go to add it to a machine, it's just the checkbox for what it's called. The other thing that I wanted to cover was my NAS backup that I run. I just run a backup every night at 10 o'clock, and I just have it back up all the machines as I don't have that many. The retention policy, if you're interested, is this. There's no real rhyme or reason. I just basically wanted a daily backup for the past 5 days, so as I work on stuff, if I need to revert back to the day before, I can. Okay, on to the virtual machines. We're going to skip over the first two and jump right to Wuzza. So Wuzza is a security platform. We're actually going to jump down to the game server next. Game server 01 is actually what I'm using to run my Puffer panel. Puffer panel is related to Pterodactyl, which is another game hosting service that runs through Docker. And it's just a nice, simple way to spin up game servers. They even have built-in templates for things like modded Minecraft or 7 Days to Die, and games of that nature. So far, I've done very minimal stuff with it, but it's been able to spin up a vanilla Minecraft server without any issues, and I've found the performance to be more than fine. On to Kali. I currently work in cybersecurity, and I've always had a bit of an interest in cybersecurity, so I have a Kali box, as you would. I don't really use it all that often outside of labs, because really that's all I do use it for. But I wanted to have a dedicated machine to be able to do any of the labs, as sometimes the online sites like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box, their built-in VMs that you can rent or use are kind of trash at times. Plus, this lets me save state of what notes I've taken or commands that I've recently run if I want to come back to a lab days later. I've just found it really convenient. Moving up to the Linux gaming VM, this VM is exactly like what it sounds. This was just used for testing how gaming works on Linux. Unfortunately, the AMD card doesn't really want to cooperate a lot with the Steam library, or specifically at least Civ 6, which is what I've been using for testing. But I think that's probably more of a user error and skill issue on my part than it is Ubuntu or Steam. Speaking of Ubuntu, I have a hysterically named Ubuntu Debian VM up here, and this is just Ubuntu long-term support, and then there's also Manjaro. I'm mentioning them both at the same time just because they're dev environments. Not that I do a lot of software development, basically none at all, but I wanted to have two boxes that are just kind of there if I need them. The most interesting box on here, though, is my Docker host, and that's because it's what I run most of my services on. Because of this issue, though, we're going to switch over to the actual IP here. All right, now that we're signed in to the VM using Proxmox via the IP, that way I don't have to reconfigure everything for OBS to be recording from my terminal. I just figured this would be a little bit easier. So we're going to do Docker PS to get all the services that are running. And as you can see here, we have homepage running. Homepage is this screen right here, which is just a Docker container that has a couple different services that you can show. You can include ping times, up times, and a couple other different aspects to it, along with the capability for some dashes. I don't really have a lot configured with mine, but I liked being able to have the pretty little icons, and that's about as far as I got with it. The only thing I don't like is as soon as you start typing, it brings up a Google search bar, as opposed to then using the search bar at the top. And then when you hit enter, it'll just take you to a new tab and leaving the old one there. I'm 90% sure you can configure this, just so you can be aware of how your browser may handle searching. All right, so the next thing that we're going to cover is we're going to cover the Nginx proxy manager. There's really not much to this one, so I think it's fine for us just to cover it real quick, just so everybody has an idea of how it works. Because everyone makes it seem like it's a black box of mystery, and I don't even have it saved. All right, so this is the admin panel for Nginx Proxy Manager. As you can see, we have 8 proxies, which I'll just go to right now. There they are. It's that easy. I can do another video on this later if need be, but really you just say what site you want it to be. So whatever this is, and then where it needs to go. So all this does is just basically a man in the middle, and whatever you type in goes. So instead of needing to type in 192.168.1.100, which takes me to Proxmox, I can just type in proxmox.tannerdoestech.com, and then on my router, it sees that I'm making a request to that, and it just points it to 192.168.1.227, and Nginx handles, okay, well, what do you want to do? You want to go to Proxmox? All right, go here. Go to this IP, go to this port, and then that's what finishes that request. I have a feeling it's the traffic backwards, which is getting lost, and that's why we don't have the shell working in Proxmox. Problem for another day. Next two things on here is Grafana and Graphite. Grafana, I think, is a fantastic app for data visualization. I've used it at work in my previous role, and it's been a fantastic tool, and I think it's a really good one to start off with and use. Graphite, on the other hand, is trash, seemingly to me. I think the user interface is horrible, and the only reason I'm using it to grab any metrics is because Proxmox and TrueNAS both offer an easy way to integrate it, and I didn't want to spend that much time on it as I just couldn't care less. TrueNAS also has an easier way to set up webhooks and things of that nature that allow you to then get notifications via Slack, Teams, Discord, what have you, which I found to be a bit better than trying to do something with Grafana and then do something off of there. I have plans to do something with Notify, but I just haven't gotten around to spinning up my own server and getting all of that situated yet. Real quick, we're just going to go over the storage situation. So Proxmox will have its own disk where it stores the ISOs and its own OS, and it partitions that on its own. But then I have a whole secondary 1 terabyte SSD, and that's where all the VMs actually host their storage. As you can see here, I'm getting pretty full in storage already. And as you can see here, I have plenty of storage on the backup. My TrueNAS host actually has some open slots on it, and I'm tempted to add the two 2 terabyte SSDs that I have. That way I could just put all the storage for the VMs on the TrueNAS host. Only real reason for doing that, in my opinion, is to make it easier for eventually down the road to have a high availability cluster in Proxmox. That's my Proxmox environment. I don't have a lot going on in it right now, but I do have plans to start studying for Kubernetes as it's related to something that I'm working on at work. I'll probably do some videos on that as I start to go into that process. As all the other YouTubers will tell you, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, and if you're curious enough, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.